Is the word interpretation appropriate? He has the very toward this word. And do we really use this word appropriately? Or is there any suitable word? Because what process what important is understanding text. Interpretation convey the process of understanding or process of comprehension. Because the interpretation, according to him, interpretation means we know that it is an inquiry. It is an inquiry into symbols and metaphors. So interpretation is a complex process because the poet or writer or novelist who writes the text is no smaller or is nothing less than a scientist of words. Because a writer or a poet is a scientist of words means they experiment with the words. Poet is a scientist of words and they experiment with the words. Therefore, the readers or analysts they have to interpret it appropriately or understand it appropriately. The process, why does it become complex? Because when poet or novelist, dramatist, they use the word, they give the new shade of meaning to it. They revive the words with the new shade of meaning. Therefore, the process of interpretation, according to him, is not just a critical process, but the process of interpretation becomes a creative process as well. Because words are a kind of code used for certain thought or the expression of certain feeling. Therefore, the readers or the analysts they have to decode that code or decode the term. It is a process of decoding. So it is decoding of the message. Message or thought or feeling. So interpretation doesn't mean just knowing one meaning of the word, but it is beyond that. One has to arrive at what kind of feelings and thoughts the writer have expressed. Therefore, inventing new words is also a part of Shakespeare. We know that so many words he invented, contributed for the expression of certain meaning, feelings, or ideologies. Inventing new words, some words borrowed from other languages, some words newly invented,
Compounder.
is an inevitable process. Therefore, according to Suresh Joshi, interpretation is not only a linguistic process, but it is a psychological process also. It is an aesthetic process also. So the critic Suresh Joshi is against intellectualizing the process of reading poetry. Why does he oppose the intellectualizing process of poetry? Because he says that when critic or analyst interpret the poetry, they say that what the poet is going to say. So he says that it is not the ultimate meaning of the poem. They simply indulge in that phrase, discovery of what does the poet want to say. Yes. फोटो बघितले तुम्ही सगळे जण होता माणसं नाही होती. हो हा नवीन चालू करा. हो आणखी लागत असलं सांगा हो चालेल घेऊच ना. हे आवश्यक आहेत ते साथ मग घेता येईल. आपल्याला जे काम आहे तेवढं आपण कॉन्सन्ट्रेट करू. जे एक्स्ट्रा आहे ते तुम्ही आधी सुचवत जा, आपण त्याप्रमाणे घेऊ. हो नाही होतो वाईटणार आहे त्या दिवशी पर्यावरण दिन झालं. लेक्चर चालू आहे आपण पुन्हा चर्चा करू. What the analysts do, that is, they simply indulge in discovery of what does the poet want to say. So the critic's main argument is that generally the readers remain indifferent to what does the poet do in the poem. So that is the important aspect regarding comprehension of the poem. They remain indifferent to what the poet has done in the poem. With experiment, he has done. So he states that, hence he asserts that only mediocre minds go about interpreting poetry.
Hey.
नंतर बोलू त्या विषयावर लेक्चर चालू आहे थोड्या वेळाने भेटा एक 10 मिनिटात
Omega.
So because of the interpretation process, the poetry should not be relegated to the secondary stage. Because the name of interpretation, if only critics or readers, they have been preoccupied with what the poet want to say. So which linguistic experiment he has done, that one should understand or one has to focus on that aspect while interpretation. Therefore, he says that even we cannot use always the word of interpretation in that context. We can also use other words for that. So, as the collection of the essay has been entitled Deep Thinking, like that, Suresh Joshi has deeply reflected over the process of interpretation, and he has also told us some unique ideas because in criticism generally people think that what ideas we have got, those ideas are from the western nations or western countries, but we also have the rich legacy of literary criticism from Abhinav Gupta, Sant Jnaneshwar, Amit Khusro, or B.C. Mardekar, Rasat Heri. So we have great critics in India, and many ideas we can find that they resemble the Western critics' ideas also. That shows the great contribution of Indian thinkers or great contribution of Indian critics to the process of interpretation. Because how does the drama reflect the human life? Our concentration is about the interpretation process, that this process of interpretation sometimes the readers remain indifferent to what the poet has done. So he would like to say that we should, it is according to him, it is an aesthetic experiment. So as an aesthetic experiment we should analyze it. Understand the aesthetic value of poem. Only understanding symbols or metaphor doesn't mean that one has understood the poem, but one has to get the aesthetic experience or aesthetic value of the poem. One has to understand. So new experiments to Gujarati literature. We can find that he is a modernist critic in Gujarati literature, and his contribution can never be forgotten. As note on this also will be said. So today some important ideas of this poet we have studied. Some other ideas we are going to deal now. One more idea we are going to think about this, and later remaining ideas tomorrow. Whereas at 12:30, short story by V.M. Basir we are going to discuss.
क्लास सर को पता है सर को पता है जाने का 1 बजे बोले सर कहाँ पे
Thank you, sir.
देखो जाने का नहीं कॉलेज पे अपना पड़ेगा
At 12:30 we will begin the world renowned notes.